It's a simple picture then, where million RMB growth of output requires about 4 million RMB of investment. That's what the picture is telling you. Which means, of course, that 10% growth of output is going to need investment at 40% of the national income. Investment now is reported at well over 50% of the national income. And that I think should lead us to expect some quite dramatic growth in the coming year. Indeed, that's been true for a few years, that saving has gone above 40%. Saving is not necessarily investment. You can, the country can use its saving in various ways. It can buy US Treasury bonds, for example, and it does. But at the same time, there are foreigners who invest in China, and it happens that the saving proportion is rather similar to the investment proportion, as is true with most countries. Why is saving so much? Just parenthetically remark on this. It's usually said, this is not entirely untrue, that it's because Chinese save a great deal. Let's say Chinese people, Chinese households. But actually, when you look at the government statistics on what they call the sources of finance for investment, you find that a very large part of it comes, about two-thirds, comes from reinvesting profits. Now, of course, the profits are income that is essentially somebody's income, except that quite a lot of these profits are the profits of state-owned enterprises. And so it's not entirely obvious to people that this is in some sense theirs. Indeed, China is a very unusual phenomenon in being a country where the government saves a considerable amount, if you include in government the whole of the public sector. The public sector is a big saver. But urban households do save a great deal, and they do have rapidly rising incomes. So it seems to me at a common sense level, it's not too surprising that people fail to have their consumption keep up with their income. I'm intrigued by the disparity between people's sense of what it's like. They'll say, oh yes, of course, people are saving in order to pay for their children's education and for going to university and for buying houses. But of course that means that the saving would be quite soon balanced by expenditure. There'd be a lot of dissaving as well. The people who are sending their children to university are running down their savings, and that's a negative element that should be put against the positive. So you've got to realize that the remarkable feature is that on the official measures, that households are saving a lot net. That's to say, it's not just that you only account for the savings, but you presumably also account for the dissavings to be set against it, and you're still left with a very large positive surplus. All of this one has to understand, because it's the issue is whether it's going to continue. See whether the very high rate of saving and high rate of investment is the result of influences and causes that are likely to continue. And I think it's pretty clear from the account that I've just given that we would expect it to go on like this. There's no obvious reason why the profits of state-owned enterprises in aggregate should become much smaller. There's just the possibility that if the government were really serious about doing something to shift demand to consumption, to increase people's incomes, particularly, for example, in rural areas. That's to say, if they were to move more to a redistributive tax and subsidy system with, for example, non-contributory pensions for people in rural areas and measures of that kind, they might very well think that it would be necessary to acquire government revenue in order to pay for all of that. That's not currently the sense you get in China, where because of very rapid increase in net tax revenue in China, rising at 20% and more a year for quite a number of years, the sense is rather that there's plenty of money around to do whatever the government wishes to do with it. But you would expect that perhaps not to continue. I think it's very hard to believe that tax revenue will continue to increase at 20% a year very much beyond now, because the reasons why that should have happened will cease to be so valid.